Oh, hey, I'm almost lost for words. Let's try and focus on some of the positives. How would I pimp this team? I mean, I think I'll pull this team apart, to be honest. Hi, my name is Ben Dinnery from Premier Injuries, and this is Pimp My Team. Yeah, so looking at the team, the standout player for me here is obviously Ben Chilwell. We know that he's picked up an ACL problem, which the club are going to manage conservatively. So that means it's basically non-surgical treatment for now. But we know that's going to take at least 6 weeks. And then even after that, a possibility that he could still go under the knife. So for me, it doesn't make much sense to be holding on to the likes of Chilwell. And I see the straight swap. Marcus Alonso, I do like him, started the season really well. 2 double-digit returns across those first 6 game weeks. So if he can recapture anything like the form that he showed then I think he will be a great fantasy asset. Yeah, so I mean, looking at this team, do you know what it is? I actually really, really like this team. And I try to pick out players or upgrades there wasn't many that I would actually do. Maybe the Brownhill one, depending on how much money you've got in the bank. But elsewhere, there's a lot of solid picks. I do like the Cancelo. Obviously, he's very much in vogue. He's the only City player to have started every league game this season. Jota, he's locked in now with Roberto Firmino bench. So that makes a lot of sense. And I also like the strength on the bench with Antonio and Livramento. I think we're going to need that heading into this period. At least 2 players for covering. We've seen with the postponement on Sunday with Tottenham and Burnley, how those unexpected absences can certainly look them out. But look, generally, overall, I do really, really like this team. There's not much that I can say or necessarily what I would do to change this. Yeah, look, we touched upon Tottenham on the source meter reading, and I'm not, massively keen on Tottenham assets at the moment. I think we're buying too much into this possible fixture swing, and also the impact of Antonio Conte as a medium and a long-term option. That's going to be great, but for the here and now, we've seen in that Europa Conference game that there are obvious issues with the squad. For me, and I do like Heung-min Son, I think he's a great player, but it's, over 10 million for a midfielder. I just think he's an expensive player to have in there when you're not really sort of guaranteed his returns at the moment. There's 2 ways that Antonio Conte can go with this. We've seen him go with a 3-4-3, which I don't think suits Tottenham really well. And I think maybe Son suffers in that position. He's probably playing just a little bit deeper than he wouldn't ordinarily. We have seen Conte go with a 3-5-2 at Inter, and that would really benefit the likes of Son and maybe Harry Kane. But I think, like I say, I'd be looking to maybe move on. Heung-min Son, I mentioned it on the last team, Diogo Jota, at his price point, we're talking, 7.7? You can bring him in. We know he's going to be locked in for a few games yet. Roberto Firmino, even when he comes back to the squad, he isn't going to start straight away. And that frees up money elsewhere to make a couple of tweaks. I mean, you can look at maybe a Callum Wilson upgrade, or even an upgrade on your bench, and to improve on somebody like Brownhill. Maybe Brownhill to teammate Kone, who I'm a big fan of. Yeah, so this is how I would pimp this team. Again, we touched upon it with Tottenham and Harry Kane. There's a lot of money tied up there on a player. Like I say, I think we've only had 1 Premier League goal this season. Massively disappointed. And of course, his time will come. But for now, I prefer to buy into Harry Kane maybe when he has that little bit of form and when he starts scoring those goals. And look, the easy option here is to downgrade him, free up some cash, and build that bench outside of Livramento. Brownhill and Locadia, I think you definitely need to step up on those. You could look at maybe somebody like a Callum Wilson if you're going to buy into this new attacking Eddie Howe philosophy. Certainly with the next couple of games in mind, Norwich in particular, Newcastle need 3 points. If we can show anything like that attacking philosophy that we did against Brentford, then, we could hopefully, we could give Norwich a really good game and come away with 3 points. And it's going to be the likes of maybe a Callum Wilson, who was on spot kick duties as well, but also somebody like Alan Saint-Maxim, who's a bit of individual brilliance, maybe, enough to just break those lines and create something out of nothing. Yeah, so this is how I would pimp hanging by a thread. The couple of standouts for me, there's 3 players really that I'm looking at, and maybe a fourth. I know people don't like, I'm going to mention the goalkeepers. I know people don't like to necessarily have a playing goalkeeper sitting there on the bench. It causes it, but I just think at this time of year, with COVID, with injury, we see with Ben Foster was a late withdrawal for Watford over the weekend with postponements. I always like to try and have as much cover as I possibly can. Getting rid of Heung-min Son, that frees up funds. There are plenty of good midfield, at lower price points, which will allow you to upgrade in other areas. The bench is fairly decent. Adam Armstrong in attack, it's Southampton, the Saints have struggled up there, whether it's been with Shea Adams, whether it's been with Broha or Adam Armstrong. I think he will find his feet, but it's a little bit soon for him. I don't think even Broha, I think Broha's a better pick, to be honest, if he can get the minutes he showed when I think he started. He's got a couple of goals there as well. He looks a threat from the bench. So, he's a good prospect, both for Saints and maybe Chelsea long term. And I've also got question marks with regards to Phil Foden, and I know he's very much in vogue. He's flagged as an injury doubt. He's just one of those players that we're coming into a period, as with all City players, Pep will rotate. And you're right, Russ touched at the top of the show. City haven't been as generally as bad as we typically have seen them in the past. But in and around, this period, when you have a squad with so much strength and depth, then, inevitably there are going to be big amounts of rotation, heavy rotation. And Foden is one of those players that can be interchanged quite easily by, 2, 3, or possibly 4 players. If he's playing in that false 9, you've got Gabriel Jesus. We've seen Raheem Sterling up there. We've also seen Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, in midfield. You've got the likes of Gundogan, Rodri or Fernandinho is going to have that holding role. So maybe Phil Foden for me, and I haven't even mentioned Jack Grealish as well. So both of those players are coming off the back of minor issues. So, there's big question marks for game week 14, but also, do they play in game week 15 as well? It depends on how they respond over the next couple of days. But those are the players that I'd maybe look to change and possibly upgrade. I don't want to keep on banging the drum about Tottenham, to be honest here, but I just see pound signs hovering above Harry Kane's head and Heung-min Son, and just thinking, what it is? There's a lot of money tied up in a team that is based purely just on upcoming fixtures and hope. There's a lot of risk associated with that. And yes, look, those words could come back to bite me. But when you're looking to mitigate risk and you're looking to maybe spread your potential losses, then for me, 1, Tottenham player at a push, but 2, I would be looking elsewhere. I really, really would. Who would I look? I think Son would be the one. Harry Kane just gets the nod over Son. He's Kane's on the spot kick duties. So in that midfield, who am I looking at? I mean, I thought Bernardo Silva's been flying under the radar, but he comes into the theory that there's going to be heavy rotation in and around that City team. So whoever you go with there is going to be a slight risk. Anyone else? If you're looking to downgrade and maybe free up some funds, I'd say, Everton wants to get a few players back. Maybe, like I say, not in this game week and maybe not the next. But I like Abdul Doucouré. I like Conor Gallagher. I think he's been a revelation this season. So two good. Maxwell Cornet. I think he's been brilliant. And Burnley are moving away from this, like I say, what you would see, this pretty boring, predictable team, and Corney just offers something a little bit different, and I expect him to have a really strong second half to the season. Again, the first player that really stands out for me is Raul Jimenez. I'm just not sold on Wolves at this moment. Bruno Lage is definitely an upgrade on Nuno Espirito Santo. He turned a Wolves team who I really enjoyed and liked watching into one of the most boring, passive, conservative styles of football, to the point where I used to switch off. And maybe the implementation of Bruno Lage has taken a little bit longer than first thought. I mean, he's banging the drum about how injuries and squad availability is affecting him. He keeps on referencing the fact that he's only really got 16 experienced players that he's training with on a daily basis. And it's been great seeing Raul Jimenez back, and approaching somewhere near his best following that injury. But I just look at some of those fixtures coming up for Wolves. You have Liverpool, you have Manchester City, and you've also have Chelsea. So there's three really, really difficult fixtures in those in 4 game weeks. Who would I be looking to? Players that I'm sort of drawn to recently, and Christian Benteke. I said it since pre-season. I fancy him for 10 goals this season. I think he's done really well. I've been really impressed with Patrick Vieira, and again in this philosophy that he's trying to introduce down at Palace. If you don't want the Callum Wilson, would you risk doubling up on San Maxim? Maybe. I think this. Maybe not for this game week, but you look at how maybe Eddie Howe sets up his team. We look much more attacking and fluid in a 3-4-3, and that's a way that he did go quite often with down at Burnley. And maybe one player we haven't touched upon, who's going to be in and around, he can save himself. I think 0.4 is what Steven Gerrard's doing, and maybe Ollie Watkins. We've seen Danny Ings benched at the weekend. If doesn't matter who you are, if you're not delivering, Emi Buendia, you're going to be out of that team. Ollie Watkins has impressed during that, his short period at the club. So maybe he's a player that should be on people's radar. How would I pimp this team? I mean, I think I'll pull this team apart, to be honest. Some of the standouts, so, we're fighting a lot of fires here. Daniel Amorti in that back line, where he's lost his place, first and foremost. So I think you need to address that. We talked about the need for strength and depth, and I really don't know where to start with this. We've got Tsimikas on the bench. He's not going to be starting unless there's an injury or a suspension there for Andy Robertson. Luke Shaw should be back for United after. Tielemans, we know, is probably going to be around about another couple of weeks. We have Andros Townsend, Everton misfiring massively of late. Of course, he started the season well, but that was reflective when Everton had all their, a lot of key players available. That just isn't happening. Harry Kane, if you must, you must. But I just think you need to be looking elsewhere. Even Ronaldo, can you trust Ronaldo? I know he was benched as well. Again, it's a lot. There's a hell of a lot of money tied up there, and when I'm paying premium prices for players, then there's an expectation, a level of expectation, not just that they're starting, that they're returning. And premium forwards at the moment just aren't doing that. I think you've got some good midfield options, but then also you've got some great wing-back options who, the wing-backs are the new premium attackers. You've got your Trent, you've got your Reece James, like I say, I think Alonso could be good. Has Robbo finally arrived this season? At the weekend there with his assist. I think he got the assist for Mane goal that was disallowed. Cancelo. I think this team, if he hasn't wildcarded, then I would probably recommend that he maybe rips it up and starts again, because it's a difficult team to handle during this, like I say, over this festive program. Where do I start? I mean, look, I'm a Bruno owner, so I kept faith even in the arrival of Ronaldo, and that maybe hasn't paid off. We've got the Ronaldo pick in there as well. Oh, hey, I'm almost lost for words. Let's try and focus on some of the positives. The bench is 3 Tottenham players. I mean, we've got Son that could potentially come in, Reguilon, Scarlett's, he's just a bit of a non-playing placeholder. He's actually injured at the moment. But there's some big names in there which you can look to maybe sell and use as funds to spend elsewhere. I do like Wilfried Zaha. I think he's the focal point of that Crystal Palace team. Trossard, mentioned it prior. I'm not necessarily sold on this Brighton team. They don't score enough goals. And even when they do, it's hard to sort of nail down a specific player who's going to deliver those points. And Trossard is, they tend to be fairly streaky, and you have to be fairly lucky on nailing down those scorers. I don't think, Burnley cover is a bad option. And I know I may get lambasted by that, but, we touch Cornier, but also Chris Wood. He's a player we know he's going to start, so he's getting the minutes, and he's never going to be far away from those goals just because of, of the style that the Clarets play. So I don't think he's a bad option. Who else could we be looking at? Josh King, Watford, is a player that hasn't been mentioned. Watford, for all of their defensive frailties in attack, they've been producing some good numbers, and they're a threat going forward. It's particularly, if Ismail Sarr comes back from that knee problem as well. You've got Emmanuel Dennis on the other side. So I do like that Wolves attack, and I think Josh King should be on his radar. Yeah, so the final one of the day, and this is how I would pimp this team. Look, we start off in midfield because he's a player I haven't mentioned or touched upon is Ben Rama. He's a player, again, he started really, really well. My concerns for West Ham are just, this managing the squad, a high number of games. We've seen Jared Bowen benched at the weekend by David Moyes. And for me, if you're thinking about maybe Jared Bowen benching him, then that puts question marks over, other players in that area. You have the likes of Yarmolenko who could come in. You've got Vasic who come into that team. David Moyes could even tweak that formation. I have cooled, my own thoughts on Ben Rama at the moment. If we're looking at alternatives who could potentially come in, Saw would be one of those, like I say, Watford. But we have the, obviously knee injury pending. Who else are we looking at? Maybe if we have a little bit of fun, James Maddison, most mentioned it. He's coming into a little bit of form. Although again, I'm not 100% sold on Leicester at the moment. They've been a little bit inconsistent. In attack, Adam Armstrong, he would be a player that I would, look to be getting rid of. Some of the usual suspects that we've touched upon was Benteke. Brentford, they've got a fairly decent run as well. So Tony, he's got to come into the reckoning. He's on spot kick duties. I think it's been over 4 years since he's last missed a penalty, and he got one against the Toffees at the weekend, in and around that price point. I mean, if you fancy a punt on Norwich, under Dean Smith, he's getting a lot of chances, maybe not taking them, but Timo Pukki, he's a player who's going to get minutes, he's going to get chances. So he could be one to maybe come in, and I certainly prefer him over Adam Armstrong. Yeah, so my name's Ben Dinnery, and that was Pimp My Team. If you liked that, please press the subscribe button. And if you have any comments, pop them in the box below. And good luck, everyone, for Game Week 14.